Welcome, everyone. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling something kind of unnerving: media and power. We're constantly swimming in news and information, right? But uh, how much of what we see and hear and honestly believe is shaped by forces we don't even see?
It's less about someone with a megaphone and more like, think invisible threads guiding what we think. Like the information's already been filtered before it even gets to us?
Okay, now you've got me curious. Filters, invisible threads. Lay it on me.
So we're diving into two dense but fascinating articles. First up, a critical review and assessment of Herman and Chomsky's propaganda model. Bit of a mouthful. That's by Jeffrey Klein. Then we'll jump into The New Visibility by John B. Thompson. Now, these guys get into some seriously heavy stuff about how, especially with those big media players, a sort of propaganda system is at play.
Propaganda. Whoa, strong word. You saying all news is like inherently fake now?
Not quite. It's not about straight up lies, but the subtle ways information is, well, filtered before it reaches us. Think of it as like an obstacle course. Herman and Chomsky call them the 5 filters.
Okay, so walk me through this obstacle course. What's hurdle number one?
Ownership, plain and simple. Who owns the media outlet? Giant corporation with their own agenda, profits to protect. Yeah, that impacts what gets covered and how. Guaranteed.
It's that saying, he who pays the piper calls the tune, right?
You got it. And that leads us right into filter 2, advertising. Media needs those ad dollars to survive, so they got to keep the advertisers happy, right? Content that rocks the boat, makes people uncomfortable, not exactly primetime material.
Yeah, biting the hand that feeds you is never good business, especially in media. So where's all this information coming from in the first place? Who are these big outlets relying on?
That's filter 3, sourcing. Governments, corporations, big institutions, they're seen as credible. The authorities, right? But they've got their own biases too. So their perspective is often presented as the perspective without much questioning.
So it becomes this echo chamber, just amplifying certain viewpoints. What about pushback, though? If things get too one-sided, there are consequences, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's where filter 4 comes in. Flack, as Herman and Chomsky call it. Negative reactions, especially from powerful players, lawsuits, boycotts, you name it, it can get brutal.
Yikes. Effective way to keep everyone in line, huh?
Definitely has a chilling effect. Why risk losing advertisers, facing a PR nightmare, when you can just, avoid those landmines altogether? Which, sadly, brings us to the 5th filter, maybe the most insidious of all the dominant ideology.
Okay, that one sounds kind of abstract. Give it to me straight.
Think of it like the unspoken rules, the accepted truths that frame how information is presented. Used to be anti-communism big time. Now, it's trickier to pin down, but the principle's the same.
So even without being told what to think, there's this invisible hand pushing certain narratives.
Exactly. And it's not even always conscious on the part of journalists. It's more about the system itself. These 5 filters create an environment where certain stories thrive while others just get buried.
Man, kind of depressing, right? Like,
Yeah.
Are we all just pawns in this game? Is there even any hope?
Well, I'd say awareness is the first step, wouldn't you? That's what this whole deep dive is about, after all. Once you see these filters at work, you start thinking more critically about the information thrown at you. You start asking, who benefits from this? Whose voices are missing? What other ways could this be looked at?
Okay, yeah, that makes me feel a little more empowered, like I can actually do something with this information. But before we go there, you mentioned another article, The New Visibility. How does that fit into all of this?
Yeah.
So, New Visibility, this is about how, like, the whole media spotlight thing has changed, right?
You got it. John B. Thompson, he argues that media, going all the way back to the printing press, but really exploding with radio, TV, now the internet, it's totally changed how we see power, how we experience it.
Makes sense. Like, way back, most people, they only saw their king or whatever, like a handful of times, right? Now, politicians are tweeting selfies, doing interviews from their couch. It's kind of crazy.
Total paradigm shift. Thompson calls it going from a spectacle of power to a society of self-disclosure. Leaders, they can't just be distant figures of authority anymore. They got to share personal stories, seem relatable, building trust, or at least appearing to.
Like, we're all buddies now, at least online. But it feels kind of, I don't know, calculated. How much is genuine? How much is just like carefully crafted image?
$1 million question. And Thompson, he says this new visibility, it's a double-edged sword. One side, you've got more opportunities for connection, accountability even, stuff we never had before.
Because now, politician messes up, does something shady, bam, it's all over the news, social media, instantly. Can't hide as easily.
Exactly. But flip side, every little mistake, awkward photo, offhand comment, it can become a scandal. And those scandals, they become the main way we judge these leaders now.
Which goes back to that politics of trust thing, right? Less about actual policies, more about whether we trust the person in charge, like on a gut level.
Exactly. And this ties into Herman and Chomsky too, actually. Remember their point about worthy versus unworthy victims?
Yeah, how media focuses more on suffering that, aligns with the West, downplays victims of our own governments, our allies.
Well, Thompson adds to that. He says, with this new visibility, how a leader responds to a crisis, their empathy or lack of it, it's huge E. Not just who gets more airtime, but how leaders use these moments to shape their image.
So it's all a PR game in the end.
To some degree, yeah. And that's why we got to be aware of it. Look past the shiny images, the narratives, ask ourselves, what's the agenda here? Who benefits from this story being told this way?
This is getting kind of personal, actually. I mean, I'm no politician, but we all do that online, right?
Yeah.
Curate our image, show our best selves.
Totally. Thompson's talking about all of us in the digital age. Social media, it's basically a giant visibility machine. We're all part of this society of self-disclosure, whether we realize it or not.
Which has good sides, too, right? Connecting with people worldwide, finding your tribe, giving voice to the voiceless.
Absolutely. The potential is huge. But there's that dark side, this pressure to be perfect, chasing likes, followers, exhausting. And we forget what we see online. It's usually the highlight reel, not the whole story.
Right, it's all filters,
Yep.
literally and figuratively. Makes us vulnerable to manipulation.
Yeah.
How do we even know what to trust anymore?
The big question goes back to awareness. But it's not enough just to see the filters, right? We got to actively look for different perspectives, challenge our own biases, be wary of anything that feels too good or too bad to be true.
So, critical thinking skills, more important than ever.
100%. And media literacy. We have to understand how these systems work, how information is made, packaged, spread around, because in this information overload age, knowledge, that's real power.
Feels like we need to be, like, professional fact checkers just to keep up these days. But hey, if it means not getting played, I'm down.
Right. Essential skill set for the 21st century. And speaking of getting played, makes you wonder, has the internet actually, changed this whole power dynamic with media? Or just made it even more, I don't know, sneaky?
Yeah, that's the big question lurking in the background, isn't it? Because on one hand, we've got citizen journalists, independent media popping up, social media giving everyone a voice. Seems like it'd be harder for the old guard to control the narrative now.
You'd think, right. And it has been huge for marginalized voices, no doubt, challenging the powers that be, seeing people connect, mobilize around issues completely outside the traditional channels. That's powerful.
But those powers that be, they haven't exactly disappeared, have they? Just upped their game, maybe?
Oh, for sure. Think about it. The same tools used to expose injustice, they can also spread misinformation like wildfire. Plus, who's got the resources for, whole armies of PR people, social media strategists, even bots shaping the conversation online?
Man, that's, I don't know, kind of overwhelming, right? Like we're stuck in this constant tug of war for our attention, our beliefs, everything.
It's a battleground, no doubt. And the stakes, huge, because what we consume, it doesn't just shape what we think, it shapes our reality, how we vote, who we trust, even how we see ourselves.
So what's the game plan then? If knowledge is power, what do we take away from all this?
First and foremost, skepticism. Not cynicism, there's a difference, but that questioning attitude. Don't just buy what you're told, especially if it's coming from someone with an agenda. Do your own research, find those alternative views.
So become our own little investigative reporters.
Exactly. And beyond that, being mindful of our own role in this whole thing. We're not just passive viewers anymore. We can amplify or challenge narratives too.
Yeah, the stuff we share, who we follow, it all adds up.
100%. And honestly, that's empowering when you really think about it. Every click, every share, it's like a tiny vote in this a big, messy information landscape. Let's make them count, right?
Love that. So it sounds like, the future of media, of power even, it's kind of in our hands as individuals.
To a large degree, I think so. We decide what gets our attention, who we trust, what stories we help put out there. And the more critically we think, the more we actively engage, the better shot we have at creating a media landscape that's actually informative, insightful, something that benefits everyone.
That's a hopeful thought to end on. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. In a world flooded with information, where everyone's vying for your attention, what will you choose to believe? And how will you use your own voice to shape the narratives that matter most? Thanks for joining us for another deep dive, everyone.